Hello, fourth grade readers and writers. I'll be your virtual teacher again, Mrs. Ewing, and welcome to week 2 of ELA School Away from School. All right, so last week we got started and we started to think about how the United States was responding to inequality in the early 20th century, right? Specifically, we started to learn about the 19th Amendment and how it gave women the right to vote. So we started to see where some of this inequality was starting to be lessened by women getting the right to vote, right? So we're going to look at another text today, and we're going to start to see that even as women won the right to vote, there was still some inequality in the United States. In our article today, too, we're going to start to see how this 19th Amendment started to lay the groundwork for other movements and other ways that the U.S. started to respond to inequality. All right, so let's get started. Let's look at our guiding questions. Remember, these guiding questions are what's going to help lead this work over the weeks of these lessons. All right, so let's look at this first guiding question. It says, what can we learn from the process of ratifying the 19th Amendment? How can stories inspire us to take action to contribute to a better world? And the third one says, how and why can we encourage and support others to contribute to a better world? All right, so now that we have these guiding questions, now remember, those guiding questions, we're going to keep those in our heads because they're going to help guide us along the path that this work and these texts are going to take us. All right, so let's get our materials ready for today. We're going to need our new text that we'll be reading this week. It's titled Opinion, Recognition of Black Women's Suffrage Role, Long Overdue. You're also going to need your Lesson 5 lesson planner. You can see it right here. And you're going to need your Lesson 5 note catcher. It comes right behind Lesson 5 in your ELA packet. All these things, your text, your Lesson 5, and your Lesson 5 note catcher are in your ELA packet. You're also going to need a sharpened pencil. If you don't have your materials, go ahead and pause this video and collect those now. All right, now that we have our materials, we're ready. We're going to get started by reading, or actually by looking at our learning targets. So let's look at the learning target that's going to help lead our work today. It says, I can determine the main idea of a text and find supporting details. All right, so we talked about this last week. Remember, main idea is this big idea that the author wants us to pull from the text. What does the author want us to take away that really captures the main idea of the text? And then we have our supporting details. These help support that main idea. I like to think of it like a table. Right? So if I think about a table, there's the tabletop, but it would fall to the ground if it didn't have table legs to actually support it. So that's what the details do. That tabletop is like your big idea, that big main idea that the author wants you to take away. But the author has to support that main idea with these details that support or hold up that main idea. All right, so let's get to work. So we're going to start by reading. Every day you can read with a family member, a caregiver, or a friend. Today we're going to actually read our article together. If you need it read aloud, you can always visit this first video of the week to hear it read aloud again. All right, so go ahead and get your text out, and I want you to follow along. You can read with me, or you can just follow along as I read. All right, grab that text now. All right, great. I actually have my text over here. So let's get started. We notice the title says, Opinion, Recognition of Black Women's Suffrage Role, Long Overdue. All right, this article gives us a picture. Now remember, we want to check out our picture. So we see a statue here. And then we see Nancy Pelosi. And we actually see the First Lady of the past president, Barack Obama. We see his wife here. And then we see Hillary Clinton, also a past First Lady, and then she was actually at the time the Secretary of State. All right, I want to check the caption though, because this is going to help me in really thinking about what is that picture about and really setting me up for the reading that I'm going to do today. All right, so the caption says, from left, Representative Nancy Pelosi, First Lady Michelle Obama, and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton celebrate the unveiling of a statue of Sojourner Truth in the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C., April 28, 2009. And then it gives some photo cred to Nancy Pelosi, and it says via Flickr. All right, so let's look at our text. 100 years ago, Carrie Chapman Catt coordinated the final steps to get women the right to vote. Catt was a leading suffragist, or someone who fought for voting rights for women, and helped get the 19th Amendment approved. The law officially let women vote. Meanwhile, Catt was also buying a farm. She called it Juniper Ledge. The farm is outside New York City. There, she had 12 tree plaques created. One shows Elizabeth Cady Stanton calling her the fearless defender of her sex. Another shows Frances Willard calling her the woman of widest vision. Susan B. Anthony's plaque is also there. Anthony's plaque calls her the one who led the way. In many ways, suffragists were our first women's historians. A walk in the woods with Catt was like taking a course in suffrage history. However, the story she offered at Juniper Ledge hints at a problem. The centennial or 100-year anniversary of women's suffrage in August will be full of emotion. All right, let's go ahead to that next page. Like most white suffragists, Catt had prejudices against people of color. She included no plaques honoring African Americans. Thousands of African American women also struggled to help get the vote. All right, this next section is titled Outdated Approach. For too long, the history of how women won the right to vote has closely matched Catt's suffrage forest. The plaques on her trees highlighted the famous white leaders. We should move away from that outdated approach. Another story is waiting to be told. The story is about people of different races helping win suffrage. The history shifts attention away from the national leaders to highlight the women and occasionally men who made women's suffrage happen through actions large and small. Across the nation, they were all brave. Suffrage activists rallied in churches and in the halls of Congress. They spoke at graveyards, on college campuses. They spoke on the steps of the U.S. Treasury building in Washington, D.C. They spoke atop Mount Rainier in the state of Washington. All right, let's look at the next section. It's subtitled, African American Women Center of New Suffrage History. African American women were at the center of this new suffrage history. Black suffragists refused to separate race from gender. These women included Sojourner Truth, Ida B. Wells Barnett, and Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. Harper spoke to a suffrage gathering in 1866 and reminded the audience of an important fact about Americans. We are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity, she said. African American suffragists aren't the only ones who go unrecognized. Thousands of women representing a mix of regions, races, and generations came together in one of the most meaningful moments in American history. Women held public protests, lobbied members of Congress, marched, and even risked imprisonment. Claiborne Caitlin was a 32-year-old widow. She rode a horse for 4 months across Massachusetts to rally for the cause. Let's look at this next section. Hard-fought victory. The hard-fought victory represented a breakthrough for American women. Yet it was also a breakthrough for American government. The suffragists of the 1800s and the early 1900s understood the struggle for women's rights didn't end with the 19th Amendment. The large number of female candidates in 2018's midterm elections for Congress is a direct result. The number of women already declared as candidates for president in 2020 is another clear result. These candidates are Black, Latina, Muslim, Asian, and Jewish. Their breakthroughs are built on demands by women suffragists. The women wanted a fair government. The upcoming centennial of the 19th Amendment is an opportunity to highlight more women who changed history. Who should we add to Kate's suffrage forest? How about Nina Allender? She's the artist who gave up her job to become a political cartoonist. Wells Barnett, she's the African American activist who refused to march in a segregated parade. These women are just two of the suffragist stories waiting to be told. All right, now that we've read this text, let's do some thinking around it. I want you to think about these two questions. What is this article about? And then how does the article support the title, Opinion, Recognition of Black Women's Suffrage Role, Long Overdue? All right, go ahead, pause this video, and I want you to think about these two questions. All right, great. As you're doing some thinking, I want to remind you that a lot of times the author actually captures the big idea or the main idea in the title of the article. So when you're thinking about how does the article support the title, you're really thinking about how does the article support this main idea of it's an opinion piece, but how does it support this idea that recognition of Black women's suffrage role is long overdue? All right, so now that we've done some thinking about this, let's do some talking. So with a caregiver, a family member, or a friend, I want you to talk about this. Before you get started, I want to remind you, the main idea is the big idea that the author wants you to understand and take away from reading the text. A supporting detail is information from the text that supports, explains, defines, or proves the main idea. All right, so here's some questions I want you to talk about and discuss. Why did the author choose this title? Go ahead and pause this video, and I want you to talk about this. Why did the author choose this title? All right, great. As you're talking, hopefully you captured some of the thinking of the author must have chosen this title because it helps capture that main idea. All right, I want you to think about this next question and talk about it. What evidence from the text supports your thinking? So pause this video and I want you to find some evidence that supports the thinking that you just discussed and discuss it with your family member, your caregiver, or your friend. Pause the video and start talking. All right, great. You're starting to grow these ideas, right? All right, I want you to talk about this. What explicit information in the text supports your thinking about the main idea? Now remember, explicit information in the text is that information that is right there that the author is giving you that's really supporting this main idea. All right, pause this video. Talk about this. What explicit information in the text supports your thinking about the main idea? All right, great. In your discussion, you're probably starting to talk about how that title really captured that big idea, that main idea of the text. And then you went into the text and you started to talk about what are some really good details that support this idea that women's or Black African American or Black women's role in women's suffrage is long overdue, right? Like the recognition of what they've done. All right, so now that we've done some talking, we're going to do some writing. Using your Lesson 5 note catcher, you're going to record your main idea. Then you're going to find supporting details from the text and you're going to record them in the note catcher. All right, so pause this video. So in this first part of the note catcher, up here at the top, go ahead and record your main idea. And then in the bottom part of your note catcher, go ahead and list some of those supporting details in the text that actually support, like the table legs, right, that hold up that main idea. All right, pause the video and go ahead and start working. All right, welcome back. All right, in your main idea, you probably capture something like this. Black women are now getting recognized for their important role in the women's suffrage movement, right? Something that captures that African Americans, Black women really had an important role, and now they're finally getting recognized. So something like that needs to be in your main idea box. Then maybe like a supporting detail would be this one. If you look in the text, it says African American women are at the center of this, are at the center of the suffrage movement. See how that helps to support that their role is important in the suffrage movement. All right, now that you've done this writing, in closing, I want you to share your writing with someone and tell why you chose to write what you did. Then, after you finish sharing and complete this assignment, remember to read a book with a family member, a caregiver, or a friend for 20 minutes. Then once you've done that, we're going to continue to practice our fluency. So using a timer. Remember, it can be a cell phone timer, it can be a kitchen timer, or you can have someone count to 60. Read this passage for 1 minute. Count the words you read and write that number at the top of your page. Now remember, we're going to reread this article every day. So the more you practice your fluency, the higher that number of words read are going to go up. All right, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We're going to continue to work with this article, and we're going to do a close reading activity in which we dig deeper and do some thinking actually around words and phrases tomorrow. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.